The Baroque era in West Europe was from 1600 to 1750. This era had no dearth of amazing composers, poets, artists, scientists, and architects. Before this era, there were two eras of music, Renaissance and Medieval. This time period was influenced by Catholic churches. During the Baroque era, music flourished that was in small groups, often solo. The definition of Baroque comes from the French origin, which means absurd complexity. When something was considered complex, perplexing, it was considered Baroque. First, let's talk about the style of Baroque music. Baroque music's melody include a lot of grace notes and trills. The rhythm was fast and complex, almost like you've been driven. The instruments that were popular during the Baroque era were violin, cello, harpsichord, and organ. The organ gained popularity when Bach started using it, but right after when he died, the instrument was taken with him. The dynamics of Baroque music were abruptly loud and would have extreme changes from piano to forte. The overall feeling of Baroque music was majestic. Some composers in the Baroque period were Antonio Vivaldi. He composed the piece Four Seasons. The next famous composer was Handel, and the most famous of them all was Johann Sebastian Bach. One famous piece by Bach was Violin Sonata 1 in G minor. Some forms of music that increased popularity in the Baroque era were concerto, cantata, opera, sonata, oratorio. A concerto is normally a solo instrument like a violin, accompanied by an orchestra. A cantata is a solo voice or a choir accompanied by an orchestra. A sonata is a solo instrument like a violin, accompanied by a guitar or a piano, which normally include multiple movements. An oratorio is a large-scale orchestra with a narrative kind of like a musical. Now, let's talk about the pieces of art in Baroque era. Two famous artists were Michelangelo and Peter Paul Rubens. Michelangelo's first famous painting/artwork were the frescoes on the ceiling of Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo's famous artwork was the Elevation of Cross. Both of these artists had artwork that showed pictures of humans in their most dramatic form and used light and shadows with realistic depictions of objects and people. The next topic I'm going to talk about is poets in the Baroque era. Gambetta Marino, a poet in the Baroque era, had his memorable poem is Adonis, which was published in Paris in 1623 and dedicated to King Louis XIII of France. Some architectural advancement that happened were buildings now had curvy walls and pillars, distorted building elements for light and shadow, and these walls were all influences by Catholic churches and religion. Now let's talk about the inventions. At last, that enhanced the human revolution during the Baroque era were ice cream and the telescope. Ice cream was invented by Sicilian Procopio, introduced the recipe, and sold it to King Charles, who then bribed him to keep his ice cream machine a secret, but soon was public in America in 1777. The telescope was invented by Hans Lippershey, who created it in 1680. There were many other inventions in the Baroque era, like the first mechanical calculator and calculating the speed of light. But in this video, I'm not going to be talking about that. That is a quick overview of Baroque period. Hope you like it. Thank you.